I want to talk about how do you start with or switch to FreeShow from some other platform. And we've talked about and made some videos about how to import different files, and all that stuff is going to be very relevant. But I want to scale back and take a step back even from there to think about what does it take to actually make that switch, to flip the switch and say, okay, we're going to use a new presentation software, right? And every ministry is going to be unique. So this is going to vary, but I want to try to keep it as simple as possible. And we'll get to some questions. If you guys have questions, put those in the chat. I don't know if I said it yet, but I'm Garry B. Jr. and I'm excited to be here with you guys. And we are here to talk all about FreeShow on FreeShow Friday. So let's get into this. I got some slides here. They may be helpful, they may not, but hopefully they're helpful for you guys. So the first thing I want to make sure is when we talk about planning, we're talking about what happens before you start or implement something. And this is what I think about. When I think about FreeShow, I would say there's 3 parts to consider. The first part has to do with the planning, like the pre-planning in terms of just getting the system set up and getting everything in place. And this is the stuff that just doesn't really change much. Once you set it up once, you don't have to think about it anymore. That's what we're going to focus on today. The second part of it, though, is the preparation for each service, right? Preparation for each week. If you have multiple services per week, maybe it's preparation before the multiple services per week, or maybe it's preparation that you do once a month because you got everything well organized. And then, so that's the second part. So it's the planning stage, the preparation stage, which happens weekly, regularly, regular constant communication with you and your volunteers, or maybe just you if you're the only volunteer. And then there's the real-time changes, or the things you may not expect, right? And so with those have to do with literally managing the program real time during the event, during the meeting, during the service, switching slides, adjusting and pulling up scriptures and things that are impromptu, all that kind of stuff. Those are the 3 phases that I would say are important when it comes to understanding how to use FreeShow. The planning stage, though, is the one that I think has been, for me at least, has been overlooked, because I jumped into how to use it, how to make it work, how to, do this for the outputs and do that and do this. And what many people did is they learned that and they appreciate it. But I think the main thing was, how do you plan the switch? And so we're going to talk and focus on that in terms of how do you prepare for the stuff that needs to stay the same once you do switch, all right? And so it may change seasonally. Some churches or ministries may change every quarter. Some may not change at all, right? And so we're going to talk about what is planning, right? So this planning for the stuff that always happens. The reason I say it's planning because planning involves deciding on a method or a scheme for an action, all right? And this is just a definition of planning. You can look it up on the internet. So I'm not telling you anything new, but I want us to understand this is a very pivotal point in the process, because you've got to make decisions on how things are going to work. So you got to consider, how many monitors do we have? You got to consider, do we have a stage monitor? What do we want the color schemes to be, and all that kind of stuff, right? And the idea of planning, it assumes that you can control the elements needed to achieve your goals. And we definitely can with FreeShow. But the question first is, going into FreeShow, what do I need it to do, right? And this, I've said this in a video in the past because I just know it's in the back of my mind, but a lot of software out there that's designed to be easy, or to have that the easy interface, I guess. I don't know what the best word is for, but they're usually a lot simplified, but they literally dictate what you are able to do. Okay, they dictate, so you got to jump into the program and then figure out what the program limitations are, and you go from there. With FreeShow, you got to go into it the other way. You got to say, okay, what is it that I want to do? What do I want my slides to look like? Where am I going to get the backgrounds for my slides? And what do I want how do I want my monitors to look? And how am I going to send that signal? Is it going to be wireless? Is it going to be with physical wires? All those kind of things come into play when you talk about this planning phase, right? Because you do have complete control over it when it comes to FreeShow, as opposed to other software. And then provide structure and context for what you want to happen. And so this planning phase is important, because when it comes to planning, you've got to consider you're building the structure. You're building what this whole thing is going to stand on. So this is why it doesn't need to change very often, if at all. Depending on your ministry setup, you might be in a building, you might have a desktop computer with a monitor and a couple of a computer monitor, and you might have a couple of screens connected to it, and the signal goes out, and it doesn't necessarily need to change the way that you do things, okay? And so considering that, right? Now, when it comes to who does this, right? Like where and what is the process for getting this planning done? It's completed by the media team leader, right? That might be the worship leader, that might be you as the pastor, whoever it may be, but it's decided by the leader. It's not something that you have to have conversations about real time. This is something that happens before we even implement this system and this program. And so understanding that, we've got to make sure that we can flow with it. You all will determine, because you're the ones with the budget, you're the ones that are making those big decisions. So this is setting the foundation for the process. From a leadership perspective, you got to make that decision, and then you set it. That's it. That's the foundation. We're going to use this many monitors. We're going to have a stage monitor. We need to show this, and this. And we're going to have a live stream that's going to use this program connected to FreeShow to send that signal out. And this is how it's going to be. And this is what we're talking about in terms of the planning. Now, how do we start that process? Once you download this program and you see how robust it is, I'm going to lay out my top 5 steps that I think you need to consider doing before you even have your first service, before you even introduce this to your volunteers. These are the things that I would say are the most important steps to make this be as smooth as possible. And then we'll kind of look at what that looks like from a real user interface perspective. And I'll share my screen and stuff like that. All right. So for me, what I've identified is templates are king when it comes to FreeShow. And I say they're king not because they're the most powerful part of FreeShow, but because they're literally the foundation of what I would say the best way to start. You want to understand how to edit your templates, how to create a template. And once you create your template, it literally sets the stage for the next part, the styles. All right. And when I first started using FreeShow, styles weren't that important to me. I was really excited about making a bunch of different templates. And the reality is we're not going to be using multiple templates and changing those templates all the time. Once you set them, you can forget it and just work with it, right? So this is a planning phase. You just set it up, right? So you design all the templates that you want. You say, okay, I want to have a video background on this template. I want the text to be this big. I want it to shrink to fit as needed because this is going to show scriptures and lyrics. We're going to have this color scheme with the background and whatever it may be. So you got to set those templates up. And then once you decide what your template is, now you can design your style, okay? So you design your template first, and then you build on top of that, you build your styles. And your styles are the pre-made layouts for each output. And this is important to understand the difference. And I may be preaching to the choir, but there are going to be some people that are going to come along that are thinking about switching to FreeShow, but these components are lacking. They're not clear on this. This is where I'm trying to bring some clarity, and I'm excited because I've been working on a project like how to implement FreeShow. That's kind of the course that I'm working on the most right now. So a lot of the content you're seeing me talk about and working on is really gearing up and building up towards that, because I really want to see people start to use this program in their ministry with some confidence. Now, I know some of you guys are using it right away, and that's great. I would probably be that way. I would have just jumped in and started using it. And I've got some ministries that I work with. They just jumped in and started using it, and they didn't even know how to clear the screen. They didn't know how to clear all, but they just loved it more than their other program from just what I showed them. And they were like, yep, I'm switching over next week. And I'm like, wait. And they didn't know any of this stuff. And so this is where it becomes important. But understanding how FreeShow works, let's take a step back. FreeShow allows you, it's a presentation software that happens to be free, which it still baffles me that it's free, but it's a presentation software that allows you to send out the same content, okay, the same content to a lot of different places, so multiple outputs, but in different formats. So you can send out the same information, okay, the same text, the same graphics or whatever it is you want to have, but you can do it to multiple places, and you can do it and arrange it in different formats. And that's why the templates are kind of the foundation of this thing, because the templates decide what it looks like, what that layout is going to be for this monitor. It decides what that layout is going to be for that monitor, what the layout is going to be for the stage, what the layout is going to be for all these different things. And so the templates are important to understand, because when you start with other programs that are not ProPresenter, the template's already made for you. You don't get to decide that. They're already pre-made, and you just got to work within the confines of the template. Whereas when you get to FreeShow, it shifts to where you're looking at it and you have to say, okay, I have the complete freedom to make this template however I want it to look. This slide can look however I want. What do I want? And you decide, right? The developer's done a good job of putting in some pre-made templates for you. And so you need to pick which one of those you want or customize it, right? I enjoy customizing it. My wife is a graphic designer, so I picked up a lot of traits from her to do everything kind of unique as best I can, but she's unbelievable. I'm not. When it comes to design, I'm not unbelievable. It's very believable what I do, very simple, but I still like to have that granular control to say, hey, this is what I want it to look like. And I want this to be this big, and I want this to be this way, this far over. I want this to be that far over, and this small, and this part of the screen. Those things are important to me. And so you literally can just right click and duplicate any template you want as your starting point, and then make the changes that you want. That way you're not losing any template. You're just adding to it, and you can customize the one that you've duplicated. All right. So same content, different outputs, but in multiple outputs in different formats. All right. And this is where the power of FreeShow is. So those styles, they dictate the format of each separate output. So you might have a screen in the lobby. Okay. Does it have to have different content than what's showing in-house? Not likely. But it is a separate output, because you might want to format it different, because the screen in the lobby is standing up, in a different way. It's actually vertical as opposed to horizontal, or it's something that you don't have any audio to, so you need to have something different to it, or maybe whatever that is, you want to have a different color scheme because the lobby has a different color, so you want a different background to the slides that are going to be in the lobby. That's that different format that you can decide by a style setting. Okay, and then once you determine your styles, now you go to the outputs, okay? And so your output settings assign your screens. And so, as I said before, and I recently did a video where I visited a church, Christ Fellowship, and they're having a North Georgia revival. It was a great time, great fellowship time, and great teaching and everything, great worship. They had a big LED screen on their stage that was I'm guessing it was a 10 by 20, maybe 10 by 25 foot, something like that. And then they had two monitors on the side, and they had a stage display in the back. I love looking at the way things are set up. And I don't know if they were using FreeShow or not. I didn't ask them that. I just look at it and I'm thinking, okay, can that be created in FreeShow? And I had to go to the basics and say, okay, what is the number of screens that they had? Okay, this is what we talk about with the outputs. What was the layout of those screens? That goes to those templates and styles, right? And then you literally just create those pieces first, and then you go into your slides and you start making changes. But before we get to the slides and stuff, we still have other things that are part of the foundation. After you set up your output settings, okay, whatever, if you got projectors, if you got TV monitors, whatever it is, then you want to set up your timers. Okay, and I say timers, it seems meaningless and small to think about that, because, I can make a timer pretty quick and make it on the fly. But you really don't need to. This is a long-standing thing, right? Your services, in most churches that I've been to, the services are pretty consistent, right? And as a media team member, consistency is key, okay? And if you can set up, okay, we know that our ministry time and sermon time is going to be 45 minutes, then make a 45-minute timer. And just have it ready. If your speaker wants to have that on the stage display, you'll have it ready to queue up pretty easily, but it doesn't change, right? So unless the time changes where you say, okay, now we're going to give, everybody's going to want an hour. Our pastor says we're going to give everybody an hour to speak, including them, that's fine. But set the timer up and set it and forget it. And you can always pull it up when you need to, because you can set different actions and rules to these timers. And so these timers can be a starter service timer. I would encourage everybody to set up a timer that says, to go until a certain time. All right. And we'll talk and look and see how to do that. But you can set timers in FreeShow that says this timer is going to go from whatever time it is right now all the way till 10 a.m. Right. Because our service starts at 10 a.m. So it literally is a countdown timer to 10 a.m. You can literally set that up on a slide and have it be a part of your show every Sunday, Saturday, Wednesday, whatever time you meet. Set it up and have it there for each of those services that start at 10 a.m. or that start at 11 a.m. and it's a part of the show. It doesn't need to be updated every time because 11 o'clock is 11 o'clock all the time. It's the same way. And so you can set that timer up. And then, like I said, the speaker length, the praise and worship length. Some ministries have a set time for how long praise and worship is going to go. You can set that timer for the worship leaders to know how much time they have. So if they have an hour, if they've got 20 minutes, they've got 30 minutes, whatever it is, set a timer for that and have it preset, right? And then we get to the project templates. And so the project templates has to do with how is the flow of service going to be, right? And I've made the last Free Show Friday, I believe it was, we had a discussion about how to create these templates. Basically, we laid out a whole service, right? How to make a whole service. And I exported that out from Free Show Friday and put it into a separate video. So you can go back on YouTube and look at how to lay out a whole service. And what you'll find is made up of a multitude of different shows, right? So each show has its own space. So each song is a show, but you don't want to put 4 songs in the same show. You want to have one song for one show, the next song for the next show, the next song for the next show. So you might have 5 songs. Okay, that's 5 separate shows. And those 5 separate shows can be in the same section, where it's praise and worship or singing, whatever you call your worship time. You make that label in the section for that particular project template. And then for your sermon, the same way. You may not know what the sermon notes are going to be or what the scriptures are going to be every time, but you can set space aside for it, right? You may have similar announcements and or opening slides and maybe even closing slides, right? To where you're just announcing the upcoming service the next week, right? Or maybe the midweek service, if there's a such thing, or a Bible study service, or a small group meeting. Those things are going to stay the same because they're the same time, right? So you are the same information at the very least. You can make a generic slide for that and make that be a part of a project template, right? This is all about the foundation. This is all about planning for Free Show. And so once you can understand how to lay these things out, you'll have the confidence to know, okay, we can go to phase 2, which is the preparation phase, to say, okay, now we're ready to do this in a service because we've done all these steps. And like I said, this doesn't involve everybody. This is all just setup stuff, okay? So this is just getting things situated so that volunteers can then start to use it and switch between slides and switch between shows, find songs, and pull up the scriptures and all that kind of stuff. But if you just jump in and say, oh, I can pull up the scriptures and I can do this, but you haven't laid the foundation in this way, you're going to have a challenge of you're going to lack consistency. It's not going to be a reliable process in place, and because we just haven't built that structure. And so this is my recommendation. I'm not saying this is a default for everything and everybody with everything, but I will say that if you ask me about it, my suggestion would be this process would be the place to start. And like I said, I'm working on some content, some downloads, some courses that will help equip you to be able to determine these things by just simply asking you questions, right? So it's just a questionnaire is my goal, at least a survey where it just asks you, how many TVs do you have? How many monitors do you have? How many projectors you have? Do you have a stage display? Do you what's your color scheme for your ministry and all those kind of things? Because my goal is to help make this as simple as possible, because I know how difficult it is as a media team member to try to be effective and be invisible at the same time. Right? Because as a good media team member, I would tell the folks I work with, I'm like, I want to be a ninja. I want to be invisible, right? I want to be there, but nobody know that I'm there, right? I want to make sure that everything goes smoothly. I want to make sure the audio sounds proper. There's no peaks in the audio. There's no lulls. I want to make sure that everything is spelled correctly and all these kind of things. I want to make sure the live stream is smooth. And then I need to make sure nobody even knows that I'm here. And that's the hardest part, to do it seamlessly, where you're not back there banging around and making noise and, talking to each other real loud. If you're in the same space, some people have a production suite space, which is great. A lot of the smaller ministries I was a part of, that was not a part of the equation. So we had to be quiet, right? We couldn't talk back there too much. We would text sometimes if need be, but we needed to have a process in place. And this is the idea, to have that process in place. And this is going to be effective in process for whether you're small or large in terms of ministry size. That's irrelevant, because you still need to approach this the same way with a plan.